Hello and welcome to A Spirited Debate. I'm Lauren Green. Earlier this week, Pope Francis issued a strong pledge of support for the embattled Christians of the Middle East and urged an end to the millennium-old schism between the Orthodox and Catholic churches as he wrapped up his first visit to Turkey. Francis reiterated that the one thing that the Catholic Church desires and that I seek as Bishop of Rome is communion with the Orthodox churches. Here to explain the Pope's extraordinary trip to Turkey is Father Emanuel Lemelson, an Orthodox priest who accompanied the Pope on the trip. Welcome to you, Father.
Thank you, Lauren. It's a pleasure to be with you today.
Well, explain to us what made this trip so important and extraordinary.
Well, Lauren, it really was extraordinary, actually. People throw around the word historical a lot, and they use it lightly, but this trip really was historical. The humility we see from these two men coming together is really a reflection of a true love, a love of friendship that they have, and admiration for one another. And importantly, Pope Francis, coming and asking very specifically for for the blessing of His All Holiness Ecumenical Patriarch as the Bishop of Rome and for the Church of Rome shows an extraordinary openness towards reconciliation. There's probably been more progress made to that end under the leadership of these two men than we've seen in about a millennium.
One of the things that is so important about this unity that he is bringing together is this fight against the persecution of Christians in the Middle East. And, of course, Turkey is a 99% Muslim country, so this plays big. Was he able to accomplish something in that direction?
We have to pray for that, Lord. You're right. What's happening in the Middle East is completely unacceptable. Christians are losing their lives in very large numbers. It's estimated about 24,000 Christians have died, for example, at the hands of ISIS through the end of September. This unity is incredibly important. As Americans, we have to be very cognizant of what's taking place there because it's not acceptable that Christians would be placated and driven out of their homelands that they've been in for 2,000 years. These countries are incredibly important historically to Christianity. For example, today the Church remembers the life of St. John of Damascus and St. Barbara. It's important to discuss ecumenism and to have this dialogue, but the fact is, as Christians, if something good is to emerge from this suffering taking place, it must be this greater unity we're seeing between East and West. There's no dogmatic or doctrinal reasons for the churches to be separate. It's purely ecclesiological. And it's only when we're together and we speak in unison that we have a chance to bring greater awareness to the suffering of the people in those regions.
Were you able to talk with the Pope personally? And if you were, what were you able to say to him?
I actually did not have an opportunity to speak directly with His All Holiness Pope Francis, but I was very fortunate to be in the altar with His All Holiness Ecumenical Patriarch during the Divine Liturgy on Sunday, November 30th, with my son. And it was just incredible. It was like being in heaven. And personally, I never thought I would see this much progress between East and West. And to be there just a few feet from the Pope and His All Holiness Ecumenical Patriarch Bartholomew when they addressed one another and embraced, things are really moving in a different direction. And I think there's great hope which has been reignited that perhaps even in this lifetime there's the possibility at reconciliation. And we see that in the words of Pope Francis when he goes to great lengths to discuss what that might look like in tangible terms.
Very interesting. And one of the thoughts I want to ask you about, because Pope Francis, he made a suggestion that they have a global condemnation of terrorism by Islamic leaders in talks on Friday. And he said this with the Turkish president, Tayyip Erdogan. I mean, this man, this Pope Francis, is really wading into political issues as well, speaking with political leaders, which is quite on the same line as a John Paul II.
Absolutely. I believe Pope Francis, in addition to being genuinely humble, he has no fear. And he says things that I think many people already feel in their hearts. And to that end, my thought is that what the Pope is trying to say to Turkey and to Erdogan is that you have an opportunity to establish your place in history, to hold up Turkey as an example of an Islamic state which lives in harmony with its Christian brothers. And that message is incredibly important. There's no state or no leader who ever became great by worrying too much about what other people think. And Turkey, the spotlight's on them. I mean, they have an opportunity now to establish their place in history, especially as it relates to human rights and religious freedom. And there's a lot of work to be done. And God willing, Erdogan, hopefully he will have heard Pope Francis's message and will recognize, for example, the status of the ecumenical patriarchate, which at the present moment lacks legal personality in Turkey. And, for example, it would go a great distance if the Turkish state would allow the reopening of the Halki Seminary on the Prince Island of Hediyada.
That's a whole other issue, and boy, I would like to talk with you about that more. We've run out of time, but thank you so much, Father Emmanuel Lemelson. And thank you so much. We'll be talking with you probably more about this issue. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Lauren. It was a pleasure being with you.